now, the very liberal, the very politically correct Prime Minister of Canada in damage control and publicly apologising after an almost 20-year-old photo emerges showing him wearing brown face makeup, a scandal which could take a toll on his run for a second term. Plus, Showtime in Riyadh, the Saudis showed the world debris from the missiles and drones they say were used during an airstrike on their main oil production facility, claiming the weapons were Iranian-made but stopping short of calling out Iran as the culprits. And Donald Trump travels to California on a fundraising trip and, while he's there, provokes the state's right to set its own vehicle emission standards. The latest round in his ongoing war with the left coast of America. The Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, was already facing an uphill struggle for a second term in office, and his chances of re-election may have just taken a major hit. Decades-old photos have emerged showing him wearing brown face makeup. And here is one image. Trudeau was attending an Arabian Nights theme party at a school, a high school, where he taught. CNN affiliate Time magazine obtained the photo from the 2001 West Point Academy yearbook. Trudeau admits it was a, quote, racist and a dumb thing to do, and he is deeply sorry.
In 2001, when I was a teacher out in Vancouver, I attended an end-of-year gala where the theme was Arabian Nights. And I dressed up in an Aladdin costume and put makeup on. I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better, but I didn't. And I'm really sorry.
Well, Trudeau has also admitted wearing makeup for a high school talent show, a performance of the Jamaican song Day-O. So for more on all of this, we're joined by Canadian politician Mae Lindo. She is joining us from Ontario. She sits in the Ontario Assembly with the New Democratic Party. So, Laura, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. I want you to listen. Thank you. I want you to listen a little more from Justin Trudeau and the apology which came in the last couple of hours.
I take responsibility for my decision to do that. I shouldn't have done it. I should have known better. It was something that I didn't think was racist at the time, but now I recognize it was something racist to do, and I am deeply sorry.
To many, that would sound like a fairly reasonable statement. The standards and norms in society are constantly changing. What was once acceptable can often end up causing outrage years later. The question is, should he have known it at the time that it was offensive?
So I would challenge that maybe that's not even the question that we need to be asking ourselves. I'm wondering if really what we need to be asking ourselves is if the current Prime Minister understands how racism operates. It's one thing to say that you are sorry because you have done something that is harmful and offensive. It's another thing to not follow up that apology with real concrete actions. And I think that that's the piece that's missing. And that's what, to be honest, made Jagmeet Singh's response to finding, being told about the photos as well, so much more powerful and so much more meaningful than the apology from Mr. Trudeau.
I'm just curious about that because we heard from the Council of Canadian Muslims tweeting, seeing the Prime Minister in brown-face, blackface is deeply saddening. The wearing of blackface, brownface is reprehensible, harkens back to a history of racism and Orientalism mythology, which is unacceptable. A very fair point. But your point that actions speak louder than words. Trudeau has been an advocate for minorities as Prime Minister. Under his leadership, Canada opened its doors to thousands of Syrian refugees when other countries closed their borders. In the grand scheme of things, should the man be judged by his deeds as Prime Minister or his actions as a 28-year-old?
Well, I would argue that if we are going to judge the Prime Minister, who, as the Prime Minister, has to be held at such just a higher standard, given what it is that his responsibilities for the nation, then we have to look at the entire record. Yes, the borders were opened for Syrian refugees, but no, the supports for their healthy settlement in many provinces weren't necessarily sufficient to last for as long as they are here. Part of my critic portfolio is citizenship and immigration, and I work closely with folks that are in settlement organizations. And we still have refugees that now, because the excitement of opening those borders is over, are still struggling to find employment, are still struggling to get their kids registered into schools, to find housing. So there's bigger issues about that we have to also look at. I would also want us to take a second to think about another commitment that the Prime Minister made, and it was to our First People, to First Nations folks across the country who have experienced colonialism and continue to experience the impact of colonialism. Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report came out with a number of calls to action. The Prime Minister said we're going to follow through, and we still have communities, First Nations communities, that have been under boiled water advisories for like 25 years.
Okay, if I could just interrupt. So sorry to interrupt, just short on time. Would you say that Trudeau has done some good deeds? Some may say he has done a lot for minorities, for the Indigenous population. This is a moment, in your opinion, where he can do a lot more.
I think that everybody strives to do good deeds, but I think that it's really, really important for us when we're striving to do good deeds to make sure that the actual impact of the mistakes that we are bound to make are taken seriously. And I think that that's the piece that was missing for me in the apology. There was still a discussion about, the focus was on him. The focus was on these pictures coming to light. This wasn't him standing up and saying, I'm a leader and I want you to know that in my learning, this is what my journey has looked like. This was a bunch of pictures got produced 7 days into a national election. If you compare what he said to Jagmeet's response, you'll see what leadership can look like when it comes to anti-racism work.
So that is a really fair point with regards to the apology, and certainly it was a hasty apology. The Canadian Council of Muslims actually, thanked Trudeau for making the apology so quickly after they called for it. I guess maybe there is an opportunity for him to make a fuller apology in the days ahead. I just wonder also how much of this is sort of an element of schadenfreude here. Trudeau is this very liberal politician. He's cast himself almost sort of the anti-Trump. There was a lot of mockery last year, I think, when he went to India. He wore traditional dress along with his wife and 3 children. Or is this a case of the private Trudeau, the real Trudeau, being different to the carefully crafted public image?
Well, this is part of the pattern that we're seeing come out more and more, that there is the politician that puts a public face forward and says and does all of the right things to make us feel like we are loved and cared for. And behind closed doors, there's another understanding of how he has to be, whether it's respectful or not respectful. It doesn't even matter what we call the behavior. The point is that the impact is real. And what I do want to see, and what I think a lot of racialized folks want to see, are actions. Like, I don't want a full apology. I want actions that show me that we are going to address racism in Canada. And it's a challenge.
It's a challenge all around the world. Canada is no different. It is interesting, the comparison between what is happening in Canada and what is happening in the United States with the leadership, but that's a discussion for another time. Laura Mae Lindo, we appreciate you being with us so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
To